and weather modification. Now, weather modification is an industry in its own right. It's very old, actually. Weather modification goes way back. Earliest references I found are 1891. Vincent Schaefer looked into cloud seeding technologies and progressed it hugely by 1946. Military operations. So part of geoengineering is tied in with military. Part of military alters and modifies our weather. And by definition, geoengineering is modifying our weather. So depending on what context we're talking, and I'll steer you through this, whether it's geoengineering, weather modification, or military operations. Okay, back to our thought experiment. I'm just going to cut into a little, I hope this goes okay, a little video clip.
It can tonight reveal the true extent of the germ warfare tests carried out in the southwest. Government documents show much of North and South Devon and parts of Somerset were used for experiments similar to those conducted off the Dorset coast during the 1960s.
An independent inquiry has already been ordered into the Dorset trials to determine whether or not they've affected people's health. In a few minutes, we'll be speaking exclusively to the man in charge of this inquiry. But first, our environment correspondent, Simon Hall, has this special report, which includes film of the trials never previously seen on television.
The germ warfare trials carried out in the 1960s and 70s were highly secret. This previously unreleased film of the experiments as they happened. Their existence was revealed last year when secret documents were declassified. They were thought to be carried out mainly in Dorset. A spotlight investigation has, though, discovered they were far more widespread than was previously thought. Other trials tested how the germs would survive in different conditions in different areas. These were based not on releasing a gas, but instead on exposing a narrow thread of material coated with E. coli to the air. These tests were carried out in January 1967. The threads were exposed first from a ship just off Ilfracombe, then on 5 other sites running through Somerset down to the sea off Dorset.
I want you to hold that in your thoughts for just a second. So that was E. coli, bacteria.
First tonight, Spotlight can reveal the Dorset village, which has suffered a series of birth defects, was exposed to enormous quantities of chemicals in 1959. Families in East Lulworth are already demanding a public inquiry into germ warfare tests carried out in the 60s. Now, documents show chemicals were dumped by aircraft over Dorset in quantities that were up to 1,000 times greater than the rest of the country. Our environment correspondent, Simon Hall, has this exclusive report.
The aim of the airborne tests was the same as those carried out from ships, to examine how vulnerable Britain was to a germ warfare attack. This, though, is the first time a chemical known to be toxic was used, zinc cadmium sulfide. Scientists say that cadmium is the most worrying component. It is carcinogenic, and studies have shown it can cause birth defects in rats. It's unclear if it could have the same effect in humans.
Its health effects include damage to the lungs, kidneys, and to the liver, and also cancer of the lungs and prostate have been found.
The test was carried out in August 1959. A plane flew above the North Sea, then along the English Channel, spraying the chemical. Typical numbers of particles detected were 0, 1, 8, 12, and a maximum of 38. But when the plane reached the end of its track, something happened. That resulted in Dorchester sampling 4,315 particles. There was no sample point at East Lulworth, but it lies directly in the chemical's path.
Okay, so the date on top of the letter I described was 1959. Yeah. So I got an apology. It's a kind of bit of a wacky thought experiment because it was real. They've done it to us before. I and many believe that it's happening to us again. The Guardian broke this in 2002. The headline reads, "Millions were in germ war tests." The Ministry of Defence turned large parts of the country into a giant laboratory to conduct a series of secret germ warfare tests on the public. And the article goes on, and I can give you all of the links to everything I'm talking about is referenceable, and you can have this. I won't labour this slide, but the two clips you saw were the first two, the fluorescent particle trials, the large area coverage trials, the zinc cadmium sulfide so it's all kind of colour coordinated. So the red is the E. coli and Bacillus globuli, which is the anthrax mimicking spore. Sabotage trials were the transport. So they released chemicals into carriages, in the underground, I believe, as well, on the underground. And I've called this, the other one, the spider's web trials. What they did is put germs onto spiders' webs and release them into the atmosphere just to see what the outcome would be. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. So I went digging. And again, I'll give you links to all of these. And I came across and found all of the unclassified documents. And if that wasn't bad enough, with the bacteria, in 2001, the BBC broke this story, rainmaking link to killer floods. Do you remember the Lynmouth floods? Some of you maybe, yeah, 1952, just up the road from here more or less. 35 deaths in the infamous Lynmouth flood disaster came only days after RAF rainmaking experiments over southern England, it has emerged. And then it goes on to talk about 90 million tonnes of water swept down the narrow valley, destroying buildings. Right. What do you think the official government's position is on geoengineering? Don't panic. We're only considering geoengineering chemicals. No activity is taking place at the moment. People have written to their MP, and the standard reply is that no activity has been taking place. They have no reason to believe that chemtrails are being sprayed in our skies. So what does it look like? So for those of you who haven't, I'm talking about the aerosol part of geoengineering now. This is in China. Yes, sorry. That's in China. That's in the States. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you might think that's just normal sky. That's in Europe, a bit closer to home, London, Trafalgar Square. See a nice horizontal trail there. Anybody hazard a guess where this one is? 200 metres behind me, in a field, looking west. Not one cloud in that sky is natural. This was one of the worst days I've ever seen in Trent, and this only happened 2 weeks ago. It was on the 15th of March, and again, the only cloud that's natural is this little grey area here. The rest of the sky was covered in this murky haze. And to just hit home the point a bit more, this one is 50 metres that way in the car park just outside here. And I'll show you those three little, almost look like claw lines across there. I'll show you where they came from. So everyone's asking, what are they? What are these trails in the sky? In 2005, NASA came out with a document differentiating the types of trails. Some were short-lived, they say. Others were kind of persistent and persistent spreading. Now, they have changed slightly on their definition of this, but it's just to illustrate that NASA themselves are making a differentiation. The word chemtrail, if anyone says to you, it's a made-up word or whatever, US Congress made up the term chemtrail initially. House Bill 2977, the Space Preservation Act 2001, page 5, line 15, it's there. It's there under exotic weapons, exotic weapon systems, chemtrails. Okay, so this is a static. It just shows you the chemtrail or persistent contrail, and there's a raging debate as to what to call them. As a scientist, they can't be called chemtrails. No academic journal will look at you seriously if you call them chemtrails, so you have to call them persistent contrails or cirrus-induced cloud contrails. So a normal contrail should dissipate after about 30 seconds, 20 minutes or so. They are ice crystals, water, carbon dioxide, a bit of sulfur. But the things that we're seeing in the skies nowadays linger for a lot longer. NASA is on record saying that some of the chemtrails will last about 20 hours. And just to kind of demonstrate that it's not all photoshops, I'm going to flick to a video. Do you remember the 3 lines that I said that were going across just out there the other day? So the top one, you'll see, is a chemtrail or persistent contrail. The middle one is an old chemtrail. It's turning into a big fluffy cloud. And the bottom one you'll see is a normal contrail, a vapor trail.
It's the 5th of March.
I might cut the audio on this and talk you through it instead. I'm sorry for the quality of the image. I don't know why it's doing this. I think it might be the projector. But the top one you see is a slightly different colour as well. It's more bluish in colour. You can see it starts way back to the north. They look fluffier. And they obviously last longer in comparison to this very thin normal contrail at the bottom, which is already dissipating here. And as it goes into the cloud, I flick back and show you the chemtrail. So essentially, they have very different characteristics. This is a chemtrail up close. Some of them have funny bursts in. This is quite a common one you'll see. Different colours. Some of them are slightly bluish in tinge. This is a great shot actually. Somebody's managed to get a shot of a chemtrail up close. And you know, is it me or does it look like something's falling from that trail? This is a normal contrail type. This is what they should be. Some of them are slightly fluffier, depending on the weather conditions. It has to be minus 38, 40 degrees centigrade, with the various moisture content as well. There. The other characteristic is that they turn on and off. You might see some planes. There's numerous clips on the internet with them turning on and off. And they are being used as atmospheric test markers. And when you get into this subject in detail, you find out that they turn on and off in specific points. They're believed to be controlled by satellite, a lot of them. So these points here will actually go into a meteorological model as data points. And as you expect, they should and do show up on satellite imagery. So all of the lines there just off the west coast of Cornwall going up towards Newcastle, all of that is man-made cloud, essentially. When you go out and it's cloudy, you can't see what's going on. But I can guarantee activity is sometimes still going on. You sometimes see a break in the cloud and you can see the trail. Some of you may have experienced that. So when you come, I made a geoengineering diary actually. I think I had about 17 days in December last year. But a lot of that time I couldn't see what was going on. So it was probably more. So this is what's happening. The chemtrails, persistent contrails, are being taken, some of them, by the wind, depending on the regime, and it's creating artificial cloud cover. And the last clip I'm going to show you is of a time-lapse video. Now this is I think it's in Barcelona. It's sped up, obviously, So you can see